Hello everyone, I am Bets Golden and I want to welcome you back to my channel. If this is the first time that you're seeing my channel or visiting me, I'm so glad that you are here. I am doing a video today at a request of somebody asked me, to go over more embossing powders. And I do have some videos up on the channel about embossing glazes. But I have done videos on embossing, but I thought that today would be a nice time to do a recap and create a card with some of these techniques. So I'm going to talk about the differences in your embossing powders, whether it is a embossing glaze, a fine detail, or what's just considered an embossing powder. Basically, they all work the same. They melt down on a moist surface to create basically a heavy-duty plastic. And the glaze basically looks like, think about if you were to glaze a cake, different than a frosting in the sense that a frosting you can't see through, a glaze you can see through. Your embossing powders the other ones are opaque. So that means that whatever you lay them down on is going to cover your ink entirely, as well as whatever is underneath. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of show you a demo of this, and we'll get into the different kinds of inks that you can use with your embossing powders as well. The ink that I am going to be using for this demonstration is a Distress Embossing Dabber. Basically what this is it is a clear pigmented ink, a clear pigmented ink that stays wet until you set it. And that really is the ideal type of ink to use with an embossing powder. If you use, it can work with a dye ink, though sometimes the dye ink dries and then it doesn't do a very good coverage. So I always like to use a embossing ink. And the other one that I like, this one is great for like clear and for what we're going to be doing the project with today. But I like to actually stamp with this pigmented ink, and it is a VersaFine. I love this one. The only thing is it is black, and I recommend this in a clear. The reason is because if I want to use a glaze on top of this, it's not really going to show up. It's just going to make my black more vivid, whereas it won't cover it entirely with the glaze. So this works great with a fine detail, and I'll show you this as well in today's demo. So how this works with the glaze and how it works with the embossing powder. The black one, a clear one, is this one, and you can get this in this type of form or in an ink pad form. I'll have some listed down below for you. But this is really nice for just doing what we're doing today. So I'm going to show you the difference on this. So I'm going to use these two for this demo. This is an opaque regular embossing glaze. So once it is heat set, you're not going to be able to see through it. Whereas this one, you're still going to be able to see under here, but you also are going to be able to have a tint of this Crackling Campfire. All right, so I'm going to just start off right now and cover half of this with the glaze to start with. And if you're using this dabber, this embossing distress dabber, it does stay moist for about 10 minutes and then it does eventually dry, which makes it nice compared to some of the other embossing type pigments that have to be set up. It's nice that if you screw up, you can wait for it to dry and then reapply it. All right, so sorry, my dog just totally like snored. All right, so that's on there like so. Let's go ahead and just heat set this. I am using a regular traditional heat tool, and I like to start on the underside of it. So That is what the glaze does, and as you can tell, you can see the pattern under it, and it just gives a really pretty basic glaze over the top of the image. Now let me show you what the regular embossing powder does. It's an opaque, and you're not going to be able to see anything through it. See the difference there? This one, you can't hardly see anything through. This one, you can see everything through. It's a really pretty, almost like a stained glass effect. So that is the difference between your traditional embossing powder and your embossing glazes. At the end of the day, they both melt with heat, and they have to have moisture or something sticky to attach it to your substrate. You can also use double-sided tape sometimes to emboss, but I really like to use the just use a ink pad. Which leads me to the other thing. A lot of people want to know, well, do you buy just, this is the dilemma you're going to have to face. Do you want to buy a whole bunch of different colored embossing powders and one particular ink pad to use with those, like a clear, or do you want to buy a whole bunch of different inks that are safe to emboss with and go from there and just buy a clear embossing powder? My preference is I actually don't like to have much of either one of them. So I have invested in the glazes because I find these to be useful. And then I have several metallic regular embossing powders and a black one that I use on the other when I do want to emboss. All right, so now I just want to show you real quick what will happen if we lay both of these on top of this pigmented ink. I'm going to be using, again, the same colors just so you can see how it interacts with the black and how you can see that the glaze doesn't necessarily do much on top of this black like the embossing powder does. So the glaze really needs to be used in a way that you can see through it, so you can see it. So the darker the color, the less likely you're going to be able to see through it, but it will make this more intense. So you can't really see that glaze. It just kind of intensified the black pigmented ink. It looks a little bit brown, like a deep, deep burgundy. So let's go ahead and do the same thing once again on the other side, this time with the opaque blush. As you can see, once again, what that looked like before I embossed it. See the differences in the intensity of the black, and there's a slight undertone, a red undertone to this, but definitely can see that black through. There you go. So you saw me lay the pigmented ink down, the black, and just see how it covers that entirely. The opaque regular embossing powder and then with that glaze. What now you may ask, well, why do you have a black ink and why do you have a clear one? Well, the reason is because if you want to collect, in my opinion, if you want to collect embossing powders and really get into embossing heavy and you want to have a lot of colors, the black is really nice. This pigment one is really nice when you are embossing a detailed stamped image because it shows you exactly if you have the entire image stamped. Instead of a clear one, you may not be able to see the entire image, and then you go into emboss it, and lo and behold, you see that you didn't get everything, all the lines in there, and it can create a little bit additional work, or you have to totally ditch the entire project. So I like to use the black pigmented ink for stamping. I love the clear for what we're going to do today. Now on the project today, I am not going to be using the glaze. I am going to actually be using this pink that we've been working with, this blush, and then also this fine detail in gold. And I have this chipboard here. Chipboard is great, but a lot of people are like, it takes a lot of work to work with that because you have to cover it and paint, or you need to put some pattern paper down on it, and it's just like, and then you have to file it and da-da-da-da, and what if it doesn't get all the way down? So I'm going to show you today how you can create with this just using embossing powder. And this is why I am not using the glaze, because you'll be able to see the chipboard. And I don't want the chipboard to be seen through it. So I'm just trimming off these little excesses on the corner right now, like so. And I'm going to lay down my dabber and just get a really, really nice coverage all over this chipboard piece, like so. And my first layer is going to be the opaque blush. Be really careful when you are embossing this with your heat gun. If you do set it down, make sure it is on a heat resistant surface. Otherwise, you could end up ruining your craft mat or whatever you have it down on. So what I do is I like to hold it a little bit off and just on the other side, hold it so I don't have my fingers come in contact with the heat. And I'm going to let it cool down a minute so that I can switch sides. Since it did melt into a plastic, it is going to be hot to the touch for a few seconds. So you need to keep that in mind. This, I think, is actually heat resistant, but I don't want to place it down here and actually emboss it, because I don't want you to copy that at home thinking that your mat is heat resistant if it's not. So this is cooled down enough for me to switch sides, but you definitely want to make sure that you give it some time to cool down, because burning yourself is never fun. And trust me, I'm only telling you that because I've done it. So that piece is completely ready. We can go on to this piece, which we're going to do in gold. There we go. So that is my, and look, see, I touched that too soon and it got the fingerprint right there. That's okay. I'm not going to delete that out. I'm actually going to reheat it. And it melts right in. So if you happen to touch it before it is completely set, don't worry, just reheat it and it will melt and move around some more. So this is the best way that I like to color chipboard. It's fast and it works beautifully. What I want to do from here is I'm actually going to assemble the card with you right now. And I am using a whole bunch of scraps that I have. I've created some things on my channel, and then some of this stuff is like a year old. So I thought, you know what, let's put together a card, not go crazy with, you know, a whole bunch of new product, because it's nice to use this in your stash, right? I am going to be using the Best Glue Ever by Scrap Perfect, and I really love it. My recommendation, though, for any glue that you ever have is if there is a writing cap available, always, 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 always buy that writing cap, because it elongates the use of your product. You'll be able to get so much more use out of your product than if you don't have the cap on, and you just won't burn through it as fast, which is a great way to save some money. All right, so I'm going just to take this and I'm going to adhere it just right here in the center, like so. And I'll do a little bit around the edges and line this up over the top. One of the things that you can't do easily on an embossed image is stamp a sentiment. So I actually have a sentiment that I stamped on a piece of paper, and I'm going to go ahead and adhere that with some foam tape to the center. I just took a strip and stamped this little sentiment right here. Now, I could go ahead and glue it down. In fact, I think I will glue it down. I think I like that. I don't think I want any dimension on that. So I changed my mind. Now it is sliding around a little bit, which is okay. The glue will dry clear, so I'm not too worried about that. And another thing with this fine tip is you can get a smaller strip of adhesive, with which I think is just fabulous. And then I'm just going to put this right there in the center. And that is how I am adhering my sentiment. We're going to assemble the card. So for my card base, I am just using a piece of black cardstock. This is Basil. I think it's the beetle. That's the black beetle color. I simply cut the piece of 8.5 by 11 cardstock in half. So it gave me an 8.5 by 5.5 base, and then I scored it down the middle to give me the perfect A2 size. This piece of paper that I'm using now is one that I created on my channel in the summer to showcase a couple different techniques, and it's just been sitting in my stash. So I thought, I think I'll use it. So I'm just going to put that down first, and the measurement on this paper is 4 by 5.25. So it has a nice black frame on it. And then from here, I was going to do another black layer, but then I thought, you know what? I have this really pretty vellum that I love, and I like how that looks on top of that black. But I did not want to glue it because you could see possibly the glue spots. So I have pulled out my clear double-sided adhesive sheets by scrapbook.com, and I'm actually going to use this sheet right here to do this technique with you. And it's not going to fit all the way around, but that's okay. I'm going to make it kind of, it doesn't have to be pretty, this portion of it. I'm going to make it work. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to lift this up right here. All right. So that's just going up right there, and I'm just going to take this, and as you can see, it's totally cut right there. And I'm going to place this down. Right about there. And then I'm going to just take my scissors and trim that, and then we're going to lay this piece over here. I'm not really worried about that center piece right there not adhering, because there's going to be enough adhesive around on this piece of cardstock that it's not going to matter if the vellum isn't attached there. I'm going to keep that piece for a project at a later time, because it's adhesive, you know, so you can even cut this up and use it as strips instead of your tape runner, things like that. Now I'm just going to take this top sheet off of both of these top sheets off. Ooh, sticky. And once this is down, it is down. And I can see actually a little bit of that texture in the back, which I like. And I'm just going to go ahead and try to kind of flip this up, the leftover adhesive, flip it up, call it good. So there we go. All right, let's go ahead and put this on the center now. And this is a piece that I created for a Ranger post that I did recently using Dina Wakley collage paper over Simon Hurley white cardstock that I had run triple berry into, and then used a collage medium to place the collage paper on top. And now we can take this piece and pop it on like that for the front of the card. This is looking pretty cute, but I'm not quite done yet. I'm going to pull in some of these sequins from this leftover kit that I have from Click Kits. And there is a cute little card that we made in no time at all, using things from our stash and a quick technique on how to color chipboard for a beautiful result. All right, you guys, I certainly hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, I certainly hope that you do so. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you do get notified every time I do have a new video coming out. And of course, I always love it when you guys share. It definitely helps, you know, crafters find new techniques, and it helps my channel. Until next time, I'm Beth Golden. Happy crafting.